Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about northern Ukraine, about northern Sumy region. According to information we have, according to the Ukrainian sources, at night the Russian army tried to break through the Sumy region. The Ukrainian armed forces had many wounded. The sources on the ground stated that during the previous nights, the Russians, after very powerful artillery preparation, launched their attacks with a significant number of sabotage and reconnaissance groups. The first Russian groups entered the village of Rashkovichi, then the Russians decided to move further in the western direction and they entered the village of Sitne. So this was the first road of attack. And also the Ukrainians are saying that the second group of the Russians were moving towards the village of Chukuyevka. The Ukrainians stated that they managed to repel these Russian attacks and to force the Russians to fall back, but summarizing everything, we can make a conclusion that during the previous night the Russians were trying to enter this territory and probably to capture these villages and the settlements. Of course, we haven't received any geolocation that can confirm this, and we're not going to adjust the map, but obviously this report is very interesting. And I'll remind you that in 2022, when the Russians began their special military operation, they were moving towards Kiev along MO2 road. So using this road they were attacking. So maybe the Russians are planning to repeat that famous famous trip from the borderlands to Kiev. Who knows? Now let's move further and let's talk about northern Kharkiv direction. We got additional updates from the village of Gluboka. If you remember, just yesterday we discussed that the Russians restore control over some farms and barracks in the northern part of the village, and today we got additional report from different mappers that according to them, as a result of small counterattacks or small offensive operations, the Ukrainians managed to improve their positions further in the northern direction and to capture additional fields and the fortifications to the north of farms. So very interesting details. Let's wait for additional updates. As for the northern Vovchansk direction, there are still very heavy clashes. The group of forces north reported that during the previous night the Ukrainians made more attempts to cross Vovcha river to send additional forces. The only thing they didn't clarify whether the Ukrainians were sending forces from the south to the north or from the north to the south with the purpose to save the personnel. Anyway, the Russians stated that as a result of those attempts, the Ukrainians suffered significant losses. But there are no changes on the ground. The Russians are saying that the Ukrainians currently are regrouping with the purpose to resume offensives in this region. We have small changes on the ground. The Russian sources published the video from the village of Staritsa. In this video, we can see how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces inside of this village. The author of this video stated that this is fresh new video which confirms or either additional progress of the armed forces of Ukraine or that this territory haven't been captured by the Russians in the past. So we have adjusted the map and we have colored this territory as an area under complete Ukrainian control. Now let's move further and we are going probably to the most important area during the previous 24 hours, during the previous night, and we're going to talk about Chasiv Yar direction. If you remember, during the previous probably week or two, we've been talking a lot about Chasiv Yar, but we've been talking just that there are no clashes, no activity. Probably the Russians are regrouping, probably the Russians are getting forces, making plans for further offensive. But during the previous night, we received significant number of updates about the current status of this direction. First, let's talk about the northern direction, about Kalinovka and Grigorovka. Different mappers have adjusted their maps, showing additional progress of the armed forces of Russian Federation. As for Grigorovka direction, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the fortifications and over this forest, getting closer and closer to the village itself. So this is very important progress because from now on the Russians are controlling every single hill in this area. We got additional confirmations that the Russians captured the farms in Kalinovka itself. This information was confirmed either by neutral mappers and pro-Ukrainian mappers as well. Yet we haven't received any geolocation that can confirm this. Anyway, sooner or later, I believe we're going to receive additional videos or coordinates for this. Now let's talk about the most important map change, map adjustment, and it's the territorial changes in the central part of Chasiv Yar. If you remember, we had lots of updates about this direction, mainly about FPV drone strikes and artillery strikes. And today the Ukrainian sources published one very interesting video. In this video we can see a building that is under very heavy artillery fire. The Ukrainians are saying that their reconnaissance drones, as a result of reconnaissance operation, managed to discover the concentration of Russian forces exactly in this building, and as soon as they discovered the Russians, they start bombing and attacking this territory with artillery forces. So this building was geolocated, and this is the building on the map. As you can see, according to this video, according to this piece of news, the Russians managed to establish significant control in the central part of Chasiv Yar. Currently we don't know for sure how exactly the Russians entered this territory. Maybe the Russians were moving from the north, maybe the Russians were moving along the main street of 506, like this street, or maybe the Russians were attacking from the south. We don't know for sure, so that's why we have adjusted the map and we have marked this territory as a gray zone. We need more details, more clarifications, probably some videos with the units that can confirm for 100% that there are Russian soldiers. Anyway, if you ask my opinion, I believe that currently the Russians are controlling something like this, and that the Russians were moving from the southern part, from basically the Stupki, Golubkovsky and German forest. So as I understand, the Russians were attacking something like this. Furthermore, we have additional report from very reliable Russian source that is located on the ground here, who is taking part in the battle for Chasiv Yar, for Klishchevka, for Andreevka, basically for this direction, and he stated that he confirms in this post that yes, there are very heavy clashes on the Ukrainian side of Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal. He hasn't clarified where exactly the heavy clashes are taking place, but summarizing everything, we can make a conclusion that the battle is in Chasiv Yar. On the other hand, we also, during the previous night, we got additional video of how the Russians were FPV droning the Ukrainians in the central part of Chasiv Yar. In this video, we can see FPV drone strike. The building was geolocated, and this is the area of the strike. So this is another evidence that most likely confirms that the Russians control just the southern part of the central Chasiv Yar. Anyway, this is significant progress. Most likely the Russians captured even more, but let's wait for additional videos and additional updates to change the map and to, let's say, be 100% sure about this situation. Now let's talk about Toretsk, New York agglomeration. We have just one important post. The pro-Ukrainian mappers updated their maps, adding additional territory under complete Russian control. So according to pro-Ukrainians, the Russians captured this school that goes in direction of the coal mine by the name of Artyom. So this is very important progress, because first of all, this is the building not like wooden building, it's very stone building. The Russians gained a very powerful and important bridgeheads. There are very strong basements and shelters, and from this area the Russians will try to expand their positions and to defeat the Ukrainians. We haven't received anything about New York. Now let's talk about the western Avdiivka. We have additional progress that the Russians managed to achieve. The Russians, according to different mappers, managed to expand their positions in the vicinity of Novoalexandrovka. The Russians captured additional tree lines and are trying to semi-encircle the Ukrainians who are currently located in Vozdvizhenka and to get as close as possible to the village of Baranovka. The Russians captured additional tree line that lays between Novoalexandrovka, Volzovats Pokrovska and Timofeevka. So as you can see, the Russians securing their flanks, securing their positions, including their foothold, and they're preparing themselves before the greatest attempt to attack the Ukrainians along N32 road and Pokrovsk itself. Now let's move further. We have additional updates from the South Donetsk direction. If you remember, just yesterday we were talking about the Russian attempt to attack the Ukrainians along TO524 road, and we were wondering whether the Russians managed to dig in deeper to improve their positions and to capture additional fortifications. And this morning we got the answer to this question in this video, for example, that was published by the Ukrainian sources by 61st Mechanized Brigade. We can see another attempt from the Russian side to attack Ukrainian positions along the same true lines. This is not the same armored vehicle that we seen in the previous update. This is completely new one. The Ukrainians, as you can see, were bombing the Russians heavily. The most important, the Russians reached the true line, and the most important, the Russians landed infantry in this area and began clearing the territory around. So this is the second video in the row confirms additional Russian progress, and that the Russians physically cut the main supply road between Konstantinovka and Ugledar. Obviously significant progress. And if you remember, in the previous video we were talking that most likely the next step of armed forces of Russian Federation would be to improve their positions also along the main road, not just this natural road, but along the real road between Vadiana and Salotka itself. And today some mappers updated their maps, adding additional area of control under the Russians, and this true line, according to neutral mappers, were captured by the Russians. So as we can see, everything is going according to some very, very interesting plan. Now let's talk about political events. Since the beginning of the special military operation, the Ukrainians suffered significant problems with the power, with electricity, with energy facilities, and starting of 17th of July, the first strikes began in the town, in the city of Poltava. The people are striking against power restrictions. They're walking on the streets, they're blocking the roads, and of course the Ukrainian police officers try to force people to fall back, but they are also locals, so I'm not sure that anybody is going to do anything with this. The Ukrainians are tired and they just want to resolve this problem. As for Kiev, we have additional report that if Trump is elected in upcoming president elections in November of 2024 in the United States of America, most likely the United States of America will adopt the first sanctions against authorities in Kiev. And the reason of that is that Ukrainians are attacking the local church, the church that is supported by Russia. So that's why this is going to be the first sanctions against those people who adopted the law about in this sphere. And let's talk about Germany. We have additional report that for 2025 Germany reduced its military support of this country from 8 billions of euro till 4 billions of euro. On the other hand, we got report that the European Union had approved a new tranche of budget assistance for Ukraine of 4.2 billion. So in this case, Ukrainians haven't lost anything. And the most important about political events is coming from the United States of America. We have report that Joe Biden is sick. He is sick. He wrote this in his official Twitter channel that he is sick, and most likely, and some people are saying that Joe Biden tried to use this case, the case of COVID-19, to leave the president elections and to give someone else to be in charge of Democratic parties in upcoming elections. This is very important because Biden accepted that he is not able to win Donald Trump, or about to accept, or the rumors are saying that he will accept. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.